All right. Well, welcome. Nice to see you again, or see you, Kyle. I don't think I've met you before, but my name is Matthew Otero, and I am the Senior Director of Data with tnAchieves. Today, we're going to kind of briefly review some of the local county numbers. This one, particularly looking at Benton County. As a little bit of a recap of why we're doing the things that we're doing today, we are going actually county by county to every county that we serve and going over the local data. So this week we're currently doing 91 of these meetings. One was statewide and then one for each particular county, and just kind of sharing this data. And the reason why we do this is because back in 2015, legislation stated that a local advisory council would be created by the county mayor, and that they would provide guidance, feedback, and a layer of accountability for us, since we are the ones serving or helping to serve students across Tennessee, along with the college partners and the high school partners. We used to do these in person, but past year and a half has kind of limited that sort of capability. So we're doing these virtual. But ultimately, if you have questions, Kyle, let me know. You've already been through one of these, so I will do my best to help be as perform as possible. So once again, you'll see kind of the map of tnAchieves. This is just kind of giving a quick review of the counties that we serve as an organization. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. And over the course of our time since 2008, when we started off as tnAchieves in Knox County, we have worked with over 440,000 students, 71,000 volunteers, and that has worked with 600 Tennessee high schools, 67 eligible post-secondary institutions. Those other 5 counties are AIRS Foundation counties, and actually Benton County will be going to the AIRS Foundation starting with the class of 2022. So tnAchieves will still be serving the students through class of 2021, but the class of 2022, the AIRS will be taking over for that particular high school cohort. This slide is just kind of overviewing what is exactly tnAchieves doing, and kind of what is our guiding light when it comes to helping to serve our students. And so the top 3, kind of Tennessee Promise, the people sitting on the bench, and the person with the shovel, help represent the last dollar scholarship. It helps to represent the volunteer mentor that every student is paired up with, and the community service that every student is required to complete. So Tennessee Promise, the big carrot for a lot of students and parents, is the fact that it's a last dollar scholarship for every student. Since 2015, when Tennessee Promise became statewide, they took over that particular portion, so the state handles that financial aspect, but it can be used at any of the 13 community colleges like Jackson State, where you work, Kyle, any of the 27 TCATs across the state like TCAT McKenzie, TCAT Paris, and then any of the 27 four-year universities that offer an associate's degree program and are Tennessee Promise eligible. The mentor part is one of our big pillars. So mentoring and community service are 2 of the things that tnAchieves has always kind of stood for. We understand that although financial aid is super helpful, having someone to kind of help guide people along or be a resource for them is super critical. You can throw money at something, but ultimately there are things that can cause a speed bump for a student. And the mentor is something that we have noticed that is incredibly helpful. So every year we typically are recruiting a number of mentors for that particular county, so that way every student can be paired up with them. Community service is also an incredibly strong pillar because we require every student to complete 8 or more hours before every semester they plan on using the Tennessee Promise Scholarship. This past year has been a little bit different, obviously, with not able to do things in person, but we'll go into that a little bit later on. But the reason why we do that is because our chairman, Randy Boyd, he always felt that it was important to give back. So since a student has this as an opportunity, we do ask the students give back at least 8 hours or more, and that can be either through community service or through job shadowing, which can also be really super beneficial for a student as they're trying to figure out maybe what they want to pursue. If, say, they were going to go to Jackson State, what kind of degree they would want to be pursuing while they're there at their time. The bottom 2 notifications down there at the bottom highlight some of our newer initiatives. So before, we obviously focused a lot on college access, but now we have also, in addition to college access, trying to focus on college retention. And so this is done in unison with our college partners. Obviously, we would not be able to move the needle without them, but together, we felt like we could try to help provide our own sort of input that hopefully helps the student as well. And so the first one being the summer programs that we host. At all 13 community colleges across the state, we host a summer bridge program. And these programs are kind of like a 3-week academic boot camp that students who otherwise would maybe be testing into learning support classes can give up their 3 weeks and sign up and essentially take English, math, and reading with the hopes that at the beginning of the semester they test, and then at the end of the semester or at the end of the program, test out again and see if they can test out of those learning support classes. With this past cohort, we actually had 89% of our students show improvement, so a success rate of either testing out or showing improvement, which is always a big win for us. The other program is the Summer Institute, which is something that we've been doing in Memphis for the past couple of years. We focus a lot on kind of the urban core of Memphis. And this past year, we had 29 students participate. That program's a little bit different since it's a 6-week program. It's a little bit more intense, but it also gives the students a chance to get college credit earning classes out of the way. For this particular cohort, 100% of them identified as a minority, 85% came from a low income household. And even with all of that kind of in their background, they all had a 100% success rate, which meant that for all 29 of them, they were able to test out of their learning support classes and get those out of the way. And they were also able to earn 9 credit hours of college credit. So these students who otherwise would have entered in the fall a semester behind were actually entering now in the fall semester a semester ahead by having those credits under their belt already. This is a program that we would love to expand to other parts of the state. But currently, right now, it's just in Shelby County, but we are having an eye on that for the possible future. And then the last little bit there with the little person at the desk is just representing our complete program. So once again, college retention is something that we are really trying to focus on because we know getting a student to college is not just the end game. It's actually getting them to get their credential at some point. And so complete is just 18 staff members that are serving as kind of college coaches for the most at-risk students. So students that otherwise are probably receiving federal Pell funding that would maybe have additional challenges beyond just the general college population. So together they take kind of the baton from the mentors and then kind of in unison are working with the college staff at the schools that the students are going to try to ensure that they are registering, that they are not missing any documents with the school, and then that they know how to basically proceed when they are on campus to be the best student they can possibly. So we go to the next slide. This is again just kind of a quick overview of what we do and what areas that we serve. So 90 counties, 74 of which are rural in the state of Tennessee. 35 of them are considered at risk or distressed, according to the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development. 601 high schools, 67 colleges, which incorporate those community colleges, TCATs, or four-year universities. And then the overall statewide breakdown of where these students are going. So almost about 8 out of 10 are going to a community college, and then about 10% are going to the TCAT and or four-year university. In Benton County, that number is probably a little bit skewed because of the TCAT presence of McKinsey and Paris. So those numbers are not quite probably aligned with the statewide average, but it also, as we'll see a little bit later on, it produces a higher graduation rate because of how well the TCATs are producing their students. But we'll go into that a little bit later on. We jump into this. This again is kind of the numbers on average for each cohort of students. On average, each year, tnAchieves is working with 60,000 high school seniors. A couple of years ago, we actually worked with about 64,000 students. And so it's an incredibly large number. Together, we wouldn't be able to do that without all the help from our college partners and the mentors. And so the result of us all working together is that 89% of all high school seniors are going through the tnAchieves program. So basically, if you're applying for Tennessee Promise in one of those 90 counties, you're being enrolled in a tnAchieves program. In addition to that, 78% of all first-time freshmen at the Tennessee community colleges are actually tnAchieves students. So on average, about 8 out of 10 students that are going to the community college are going to be the ones that applied for Tennessee Promise. And then 86% of them are Tennessee community college graduates or students that are graduating from a community college are ones that have gone through the tnAchieves program. So for us, we see it as a partnership. If we are able to have success, then in turn, we know that the community college is able to have success as well, and vice versa. If you guys are having success, it means that we're having success. That middle line is just showing kind of some overall data about them, that 56% of the students that applied for a promise actually end up being eligible for federal Pell Grants. That's all based on the algorithm that the FAFSA has that takes into account each student's family kind of background. 40% of the students are considering themselves as first-generation students. That's self-reported, so that number you want to probably take a little bit with a grain of salt, but that is what the student is identifying when they apply for Tennessee Promise. And then 51% of the students are pursuing either a health science or STEM field, which, as we all know, kind of from the business side with the state of Tennessee, it is producing a student that then they can sell to the job force and to employers that maybe want to come to Tennessee and know that they have an employee group that can go ahead and fill the roles that they're going to have. Every year, Tennessee Promise pays out about $32 million for the program to function. And then Tennessee Achieves operates at about a $2.5 million budget. Most of that is all privately fundraised, with a portion coming from the state of Tennessee for things like the COMPLETE program that I mentioned a little bit earlier. I did see you had a message, Kyle. You said, yeah, I can definitely get you in touch with who the COMPLETE coach is for the 14 counties that Jackson State serves. You may know also it's like Esther Rowe. You may have heard her before. She is the one that serves that particular service area, but I can message you her contact information so you have it. One thing before I move on to this slide is just kind of highlighting that, we understand that every student that applies for Tennessee Promise may not end up using it or may go into a Promise institution. But even if it is a Plan B, Plan C, or all the way to Plan W, Tennessee Promise is there as an option for students. And that's why it is a really critical thing that we make sure that all students are hopefully applying for it. So that way they at least have this in case something crazy happens, like, I don't know, the past year where a pandemic may happen. It may be nice to have that as a backup option. All right, so now we get into the nitty gritty stuff. Kyle, you put up with me to get through all that so that we can go actually into what Benton County is looking like. So this first slide is going to show us kind of FAFSA data and then also community service data. The FAFSA is something that every student is required to remain Tennessee Promise eligible. And if we look at this past year, we can see statewide, we were at about 86% percentage. So, a really good percentage. Is a little bit lower than we were the previous year, which was 90%. Then if we look at Benton County specifically, you guys actually outpaced the state by a couple of percentage points, which is awesome. Obviously we are not content with just staying at that number. We want to get back to at least that 90% number, if not higher. But it looks like with the groups that were there, whether it be the high school counselors, the school staff, the college staffs, students were filing their FAFSA understanding that not only is it important for Tennessee Promise purposes, but it's also super critical for things like applying for the Hope Scholarship or for any federal funding that a student may be eligible for. So that way, if they do decide to go to Jackson State or one of the four-year schools or the TCATs, they have as much financial aid readily available to them. The community service number is also something that we're super proud of. Almost statewide, we are just under 3.4 million hours since we started back in 2008, which is a pretty crazy number. Benton County is just under 6,000 total hours submitted. And so that number is just going to continue to grow. Our chairman, Randy Boyd, says that we are one of the largest community service organizations in the state. We don't know that if we are the largest for sure, but we kind of run with that internally. And it is a really cool thing to kind of hang our hat on, to know that these students are giving back in the communities that they're going to high school in, maybe that they're going to college in. And hopefully, even Jackson State, possibly, I think we see some submissions where people are maybe getting their hours done there. So hopefully people in the community that are maybe watching this later on are seeing those hours done for them. The next slide is just going to show us more critically of the students from Benton County. This one in particular is looking at the class of 2019 for all those rows except for the last one, which is going to show the class of 2017. So statewide, from that class, we had just under 61,000 students. How many of them actually enrolled to Tennessee Promise? And then you see the counterpart within Benton County. And then when we look at first year retention rate for the class of 2019, so for students that are starting at a Tennessee Promise institution and then retaining to their second year of college, it's about 2/3. And Benton County is right within that average. It's a couple points below that. Benton County itself is right with the statewide average. And then we go down to that 3-year graduation rate, and we actually see Benton County is at a significantly higher rate. They're at 47% compared to 35% for the statewide average. And I believe a lot of that is probably because of the breakdown of students and schools that they're going to, because they're not all going to just be going to the community college. They're going to have more people that are going to those TCATs, and then maybe even some of the 4-year schools that are Promise eligible. This particular slide, again, is going to just compare with the statewide average. You see in the gray boxes, these are going to be for students just at the community college level, whether or not they applied for Promise. And you'll see that the first year retention rate for those students is 53%. The green are going to show Tennessee Achieves specific students. Those that are Tennessee Achieves students and then actually go to a Tennessee Promise institution, as you saw on the previous slide, they're retaining at 67%. So a significant portion higher than just the full-time freshmen at a community college level. And then the 74% is for any student that applied for Tennessee Promise and then is going to any school, whether it be MTSU, one of the UT schools, or even an out-of-state school. If they apply for Tennessee Promise, we're able to kind of track them and follow them and see what their retention rate looks like. So even them, 3 out of 4 are going to continue to retain from year 1 to year 2. And that 6-year graduation rate, we'll see that although it's not great, but Tennessee Achieves is showing that 51% of students that start at a community college are graduating within 6 years somewhere. So half of them. And whereas compared to just this regular first-time full-time student at the community college, only 35% of them are. But this is a growth in both avenues. When we first started, I believe the community college graduation rate was around 14%. So that has grown in the past couple of, in the past decade or so. But we know that we're not satisfied. We know the colleges are not satisfied. We know that the people in the counties are not satisfied with that. And so that's why we have focused so much of our efforts on retention, because we know that that is the next big step to not only getting students there, but also getting them to eventually graduate with some sort of credential. The last little bit on that slide is just showing you some of those newer programs that we have initiated and kind of what we're seeing from a data standpoint. So those that are participating in one of those summer programs, whether it be the Summer Bridge program or the Summer Institute program, they are retaining at an increase of 34% compared to the normal average. For those students that are in the complete program that we briefly mentioned earlier, their first year retention rate is also increased by 23%. And those are most of our at-risk students, as I mentioned before, students that probably were more likely to either hit a speed bump and drop out, or maybe during that summertime, have that summertime melt and not actually get to campus on the first day of fall campus or fall semester. We're seeing an increase with those students. And then Knox Promise is a newer initiative that we've had for a couple of years now, where in Knox County, every student, regardless of their income, their family income, they are being paired up with a complete coach. So they're having somebody who's always checking in with them, just like the complete cohort is. But they also are having what are called completion grants. For some people, they call that emergency grant funding. But it allows the lower income students in that county to be able to submit a request, and they can get funding that can help them with things that that cost to go to college outside of just tuition. So things like transportation and gas. Maybe they need something because they're not working or they're helping out with their families, so they can pay for that. Things like grocery cards, things like helping with housing or utility bills. Those other outcomes that maybe otherwise would prevent a student who is otherwise doing really well at the school, but is being prevented because of this other external circumstance, we're able to help out there. We do have something that just launched this past week for the similar group of students statewide. But it's not a guaranteed program year after year. So it's something that we're still working on to try to be able to make it be a statewide program where every student, including those in Benton County that qualify, would be able to submit a request for those other kind of costs that come with going to school.
What's the name of that?
It's just a completion grant request. Right now, that's part of Knox Promise, but we have a little bit of funding that just went out. So any students that were qualified received communication with that yesterday. And so, we're starting to receive those notifications this week, and we'll get back to them. But it's something that we're trying to work on to where it can be a guarantee year after year, because we are seeing those successful rates in Knox County alone. This slide, obviously, we had a lot of good things to say, especially because Benton County was pretty much at level or higher than the state average. But this shows the college going rate for the state of Tennessee. You see that big jump from 2014 to 2015. That's when Tennessee Promise was created and went into effect. The college going rate jumped by 4.6%. In the subsequent years, it kind of leveled out, but it stayed right around that 62 to 64% rate. And then, of course, last year happened. As most things that COVID touched kind of hit it a little bit, and we are right around that 57% college going rate from the class of 2020. If we look at Benton County specifically, there was also a drop, so from about 58% to 51%. I'm sure, Kyle, you probably maybe seen that as well in Jackson State. This is just something that it hit everybody equally, but we are trying to focus on that with the retention retention programs that we have in place. But we know for those that are in the county, they may also be saying, like, what is it that we can do to try to help get that number back to where it was, so that way we don't continue to see that number continue to downfall. And so that comes back to things like mentors. As I mentioned before, I know Benton County is going to be an AIRS Foundation county soon, but that doesn't mean that surrounding counties couldn't still use the help. And so if you are a mentor in Benton County and you want to help out, understand that it's going to be more critical than ever because of students not being in school for almost their whole junior year, and then who knows now with their high school senior year, mentors are going to play an incredibly important role in kind of that transition point from the high school and the counselors all the way to then the college staff at the colleges they end up going to. And so we're basically asking for mentors, 9,000 across the state, and basically saying, okay, can you serve as a task manager, as a resource, and as an encourager? Can you remind those students that, hey, you have a requirement coming up? tnAchieves is sending this out. Did you see this? Are you on top of that? Can you serve as that resource? If a student gets a letter from Jackson State and they don't understand it, can they turn to you and just say, hey, can you explain this for me? Or can you help point me in the right direction of who I should contact? So that way I don't just kind of let it sitting there and then just completely forget about it. And then the third being an encourager. Can you be that person that just lets them know that, hey, you can do this? Although it's been a crazy year, it's been a crazy year for everybody. And so if you need that assistance, if you need that support, I'm going to be there for you and your family. So that way you don't fall through the cracks. That's ultimately what we're looking for. And for mentors that have been in the past, or mentors that are going to start up, we're still going to have the whole calling, texting, and emailing as an opportunity for students. But we're also going to really focus on tnAchieves Connect, which is a virtual connection portal that mentors and students can use to message, to have calls together, and for mentors to be able to see all their students in one place and see real-time information related to Tennessee Promise requirements, as well as things like what school they're thinking of going to, their community service hours, that whole sort of thing. And so we made an investment in that, and we're pushing forward with it. But some things that will be a little bit different are going to be here on the next slide. Is just we know that a lot of our mentors ask that, is there going to be anything in person again this year? And so, although we're not going to go back to those big crowded meetings that we used to do, which in hindsight is just, it feels a little crazy that we used to do those, but we are going to do what's called an open house. And so if you are a mentor, we are going to work with the colleges to basically schedule some dates, and a tnAchieves staff member as well as some college staff members will be there to just kind of facilitate a meeting. You and your students will be able to get it together, communicate, get to know one another. And then if you have questions for that particular college staff, they'll be there to help answer them. And if not, if you have questions for tnAchieves, a staff member will be there to help kind of answer any of them. The deadline is, like I said, if you're in one of those surrounding counties or you want to volunteer there, it's going to be December 3rd. But if you are not super, if you don't know if you're already a mentor, you can also just pass that information along. So if you have a listserv, if you have a group of people that you would want to send an email to, let us know and we'll send that communication to you, and you can forward that to your group of people. In addition, if you're part of a Lions Club, a Kiwanis, a local county chamber, civic club, any of that sort of thing, let us know. We will do our best to schedule a date and time that works for that organization, so that way we can come ahead and talk in person with them. Ultimately, we know that mentors are ultimately key to being able to do this on scale, and so we are focused and driven to go ahead and get those 9,000 mentors. And then the last thing is just obviously getting the word out about Tennessee Promise. I don't have to worry about Kyle doing that. I know you are, because Jackson State does a great job of doing that. But because we weren't able to get in front of the students last year, I think that partly did play a role, because everybody was pretty much virtual. We weren't able to go in person. And so this year, just making sure that the word is out, that the application is open and live right now for the class of 2022, will also do a big, big help for us with getting just those numbers of applicants up, and then hopefully the FAFSA numbers, and then hopefully all the enrollment numbers, and so on and so on, the whole domino effect that comes with it. But these are all the things that we can really use assistance with. And then, yeah, that's basically it. Kyle, is there any other questions I can help answer for you at this time, or anything that didn't make sense?
I'm good, Matthew. Thank you.
Cool. All right.